Rich lay in the blood-red bathtub. He could never forget his deceased girlfriend, and decided to end his own life to find her. But just as he was quietly waiting to depart, his phone suddenly rang. It was his sister Sarah, whom he hadn't spoken to in years. Surprisingly, she was begging him to help take care of his niece. Rich held the phone in silence for a long while. This was the first time his sister had ever asked for his help, and he couldn't refuse. He might as well do one good deed before dying. He washed off the blood, bandaged his wounds, and went to the school gates to wait for his niece Sophia to finish classes. Their first meeting, however, wasn't particularly friendly. Sophia apparently didn't like Rich. After enduring her rapid-fire questions, Rich finally had a chance to introduce himself, but she didn't seem to care. He had no choice but to take her to her gymnastics class. His niece had received an elite education since childhood, while he was a complete failure. They had absolutely nothing in common. On the way home, they both wore cold expressions, deliberately sitting far apart. He dropped Sophia off at home precisely as instructed. Now he could finally focus on his suicide. Rich washed down 20 sleeping pills with beer and waited for them to take effect. But the phone rang again. This time it was a debt collector threatening to break his legs if he didn't pay up. Rich solemnly promised to pay the next evening, knowing full well he wouldn't live that long. Not wanting to die feeling so oppressed, he cursed out the caller and slammed the phone down. But a voice came through the phone again. The debt collector claimed he was already at Rich's place, ready to beat him up before he died. Rich cautiously opened the door to check, and found chaos. The neighbors were having a party where everyone wore strange masks. He took a mask from a drunk man, grabbed a bow and arrow, and aimed at the elevator, planning to shoot the debt collector first. But when the elevator opened, there was just an innocent old lady. Rich waved for her to hurry past. Then the phone rang again. His niece said her mother hadn't come home. Rich said he'd be right over. Downstairs at his sister's building, he found a phone and called the dealer who sold him the pills, asking why 20-some sleeping pills hadn't worked. After the doctor's explanation, he discovered he'd bought the wrong medication. He had just swallowed menopause pills that would only stabilize his emotions. Furious, Rich smashed the phone. He went to his sister's apartment where a blonde woman was lurking suspiciously at the door. When she saw Rich approach, she exchanged a few pleasantries and hurriedly left. Sophia had been waiting for a long time and looked very uneasy. Rich tried to comfort her, suggesting her mother might be out with friends, but Sophia denied this possibility. Rich noticed a cartoon drawing stuck to the refrigerator, which reminded him of his childhood. He used to draw cartoon characters and named one of them Sophia. Coincidentally, his niece's name was also Sophia. Realizing this might not be a coincidence, he quietly stayed with her. Bored with waiting, he asked his niece for a draft paper, intending to write his suicide note, but due to blood loss, he fell asleep mid-writing. The phone barely rang once before Sophia answered it. Although she learned her mother wasn't in danger, her mother wanted to speak with Uncle Rich. She initially wanted Rich to leave immediately, not wanting him to be a bad influence on her well-behaved daughter. But after hearing about the blonde woman, Rich's sister suddenly became alarmed and asked if he could watch her daughter for another day. Sophia obediently followed her mother's instructions and prepared to leave with Rich, who was nearly going crazy. He had no idea how to get through this time with a child. Reluctantly, he took his niece to a bowling alley. Sophia seemed uninterested in everything and started doing her homework. Then Rich's former boss found him, wanting information about his girlfriend who had disappeared from the bar where Rich worked. When Rich saw the woman's photo, he immediately lost his composure. She was the woman who had overdosed in the bar bathroom 2 days earlier. Learning the truth, his boss collapsed and violently grabbed Rich by the throat. At that moment, Rich wanted nothing more than to be with his girlfriend, but even death rejected him. Then he noticed someone taking something suspicious out of a bowling ball. Being an addict himself, Rich couldn't sit still any longer.